Under Jamaican law, how is threat defined? How do you take out threat summons on strangers? The person who hires strangers to carry out criminal activities, are they held responsible under the law? Is criminal harassment defined under Jamaican law? Does the Jamaican law encourage the growth of gangs? Does the Jamaican law recognize stalking?
Susan Herman is the Executive Director of the National Center for Victims of Crime.
Stalking and murder often go together. Stalking is serious, pervasive, and lethal.
Police officers are often the first people that victims turn to, and you make an enormous difference in their lives. If you believe them, if you listen to them, if you treat them respectfully and sensitively, it is the most important single intervention, the most important moment for most victims of crime. You can and you do make an important difference every day.
Retired Lieutenant Mark Wynn, a 20-year veteran of law enforcement and an expert in stalking and domestic violence.
We've got to send a message to stalking victims that they can trust us, that they can depend on us, that we will investigate thoroughly, that we will offer safety before and after the arrest, and we'll deal with any other concerns that they have. You cannot minimize these cases. This is the most dangerous thing you can do in law enforcement. It's tombstone mentality. You cannot take a case like this and say, well, maybe it'll get better, because that's exactly what the offender wants. Once we give over to minimization, the offender takes over with maximization. That's exactly the way they look at it. They're depending on everybody to treat it less than a crime, and we can't do that. The longer we spend with a case, the more we're really going to see what the victim's been trying to tell us all along. And if you walk around in the shoes of a victim for a moment, and that's the way to do it, is to see the total picture. Once you do that, then you don't minimize, then you treat it right, then you thoroughly investigate, then you track down, then you prosecute, then the law keeps its promise. Things that we teach police officers today to read in a case before a homicide, because we believe that if you can read those signs, you can stop a stalker and you can stop a murderer.
Investigating a stalking case is like putting the pieces of a puzzle together. Each piece is necessary. You have to take the time to carefully and patiently listen to the victim to find out everything that's happened. Now, the victim may be focused initially on a single incident like vandalism to her car or a threat to her family. But you have to get all the information, including the minor things, in order to assess if you have a course of conduct. You also have to remember that unlike most other crimes, stalking behavior is ongoing. It's important to continue to monitor your stalking case even after the arrest to see if the behavior is still happening. Of critical importance in all stalking cases is putting the incidents in context. Often the behavior of the stalker will seem benign or harmless to someone who doesn't know the stalker. For example, many stalkers send love letters or flowers to the victim. You have to talk to the victim and ascertain why that particular behavior is so frightening to her or him. The stalker may have told the victim that the day she is going to die would be the day that he would send her a dozen roses. Or the love letter left on her doorstep may be his way of letting her know that he found her in her new home, which she thought was a secret from him. Context is everything in stalking cases.
Your job as a police officer is to piece all these puzzles together, all these pieces of the puzzle together, so you can see a clear picture of the offender in front of you.
Once you've interviewed the victim and the suspect's been identified, try to corroborate the victim's version of events in any way possible. Did any neighbors or someone in the workplace see the suspect? Are there photos or videos of the behavior? Any answering machine tapes, voicemail, or email? These things are helpful, but you don't have to have them. You can still proceed. Conducting an interview with a suspect can be very important in stalking cases. Many stalkers don't believe that what they're doing is wrong or illegal. And one technique that sometimes works is to open the interview with the suspect by asking, "Tell me how what you're doing is being misunderstood." Many detectives and investigators have found that stalkers enjoy talking about their behavior. Consider all the tools available to you: search warrants, surveillance operations, trash pulls, phone taps, and other techniques that law enforcement has successfully used in narcotics and other investigations. These can all be extremely useful in your stalking case.
Now we know we've got an offender. This is easy. We know we have an offender who's after a particular victim. How easy could it get? All you have to do is to focus your investigation on the offender and the victim, and you catch the offender in the act of the stalking. It's not like it's someone who's going some unknown place to do some unknown crime. You know who they are. Stalkers have no boundaries. There's certainly more offenders than there are police officers, but I like to think that we're a heck of a lot smarter than they are. So we've got to communicate with one another. Because these offenders move through these different places. They travel. We know victims run from state to state in domestic violence cases and stalking cases. We've got to be prepared for this.
Stalkers seldom limit their criminal behavior to one specific jurisdiction. Therefore, law enforcement has to be ready with cooperative agreements and policies in place to enable them to effectively work together to investigate these cases. Since stalking behavior is often ongoing, it's important to establish how you're going to manage a stalking case over what may be weeks, months, or even years.
Every police department in this country should have a policy or protocol for their officers on dealing with stalking. Policy is our direction, it's our mission, it gives you an assignment.
A stalking is a course of conduct directed at a specific person that would cause a reasonable person to feel fear. Now that fear is very real. Therefore, safety planning is crucial. It's a process that ideally involves many people: the victim, law enforcement, an advocate, the prosecutor, the victim's friends and neighbors, and anyone else who can help the victim. The key here is to keep the victim safe and to hold the offender accountable.
Orders of protection or restraining orders often are looked at by the criminal justice system as a civil issue, something that's involved in a divorce or custody or visitation, when in fact orders of protection are sort of that tripwire. It signals to you in government, especially law enforcement, that something worse is about to happen because an order is clear. It's a sanction by a court to an offender of what you will and what you won't do. When an offender thumbs their nose at the court, this is an indicator that you've got high lethality on your hands, that you can't ignore it. There's no margin for error, and arresting for violation of order of protection is part of your counter-stalking.
people who watch this who don't know about the gang injunction, explain what it is.
Gang injunction is a civil court order that the city pursues against a known criminal enterprise. It's defined, the term gang is used, street gang is the state law, the name of it in state law. It's a law that was passed in the 1980s by the California legislature, was upheld as constitutional by the California Supreme Court in 1997. It is a civil order in the manner of a restraining order. It allows a city attorney or a district attorney to bring an injunction, again like a restraining order, against a group of individuals who have conspired to commit crimes and otherwise terrorize innocent people in a community.
Well, maybe you sensed it, that feeling that you're being watched. Well, the state has laws against stalking on the books, making it a felony.
What if police don't recognize it? And what if it's a complete stranger who's bothering you?
Loosely defined, gang stalking is where organized groups target and harass unwilling victims to the point of paranoia, leaving the victims to deal with skeptical family members and skeptical law enforcement.
This isn't stalking done by a former spouse or former boyfriend or someone that you know that's disgruntled at you, but stalking that's being done by total strangers in an organized fashion.
Dr. Hall says the problem is gang stalking, seeking to victimize innocent women and
Are you listening?
Crying for help, help,
to the voices of the poor, crying out from the dungeons you put them in.
Crying for help, help.
I wish I had that hammer.
If I had a hammer, I'd hammer down poverty and police brutality.
Police brutality.
I'd hammer down murderers. If I had a hammer, I'd hammer down oppression, corrupted politicians.
Corrupted politicians.
I'd hammer down barriers. Oh, they don't really care about the people when they're poor. The leaders will not listen to our voices anymore. For all the common folk. No, 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 no. The system is impossible to cope.
Impossible to cope.
And where is the justice? Cause if you try to stand up for your rights, you live no more. Division is a plan that was designed to keep us down. So equality will never come around.